Welcome back to the Kingdom Purpose Coaching Show. Today is an episode that you are going to love. We are talking about habits. Habits is a huge buzzword in today's day and age, and there's a good reason for why. I think you're going to love this episode. Are you ready? Let's go.
Welcome to the Kingdom Purpose Coaching Show. Glad that you're back.
Yes.
We're excited about this episode today. What are we talking about, Rachel?
Today we're talking about where your habits are taking you. And this is a conversation that, appeals to some people by nature and others of us, like me, that kind of have a hard time with the idea of habits because I'm not a creature of habit. I'm actually not the kind of person who loves to do the same thing every day. I don't like highly routine environments. Some people really thrive in a lot of structure, and I kind of die in a lot of structure. And that's totally okay. Yeah, it's okay because, when you're a creative person, a lot of times that's just the way that it goes. But no matter what you are like, I think you're going to like today's episode. I think it's going to have some good stuff for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I want to tell you guys a story. I heard this video recently of this guy named Jim Rohn, and he was a motivational speaker for a long time. And he had this great little video, and I'm gonna botch how it went. But basically, the idea was your habits are taking you somewhere. Like he didn't say this, but pretend they're a car. Your habits are the car, and they're driving you somewhere. And so the current habits that you have in your life today, if you don't change anything about those habits, where are they taking you 5 years from now?
Wow.
And if you think about it, you can see, okay, I'm going to end up like this. And I love that concept because, you can do an inventory today and find out exactly where you're going to be 5 years from now unless you make changes. And so I took the time to go through and say, okay, how's my spiritual life? What are the habits of my spiritual life? What are the habits of my personal health? Not good. What are the habits of my business? Habits of my family? Habits of, so I'm like listing all these things out and thinking through, do I like where I'm going in 5 years from now, where I'm going to end up, or do I not like it? And now's the time to make a change with those habits. So I think it's a powerful question, and that's kind of what we want to dive into today as we talk.
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, I like how Jim said it in his clip about you're going to arrive at 5 years in the future, whether you do something with your time or not. The same time is going to pass, whether you are utilizing it and making something of it. And the idea is that you're going to arrive at either a well-designed destination or an undesigned destination.
Mm-hmm.
And really the choice is up to you. And I mean, I think that's something that we all can resonate with. But I also want to make a note that when we talk about habits, most of us immediately start thinking diet. We start thinking things about our diet or what we're eating. And that is a huge part of our habits. But habits are really how we run our life in general. In fact, I'm kind of a brain science nerd. I love learning about the brain. And one of the things that brain science studies will show us is that we live the majority of our life from the subconscious part of our mind. And that's not like a new agey thing. That's just what it's called in your brain. And what that means is when you have patterns happening in your life, that's you're storing that in your subconscious. And the more you store it in your subconscious, the more you live from that place. So what does that look like? Well, think about how you drive home from work every day. Have you ever had a moment where you're driving home from work and you kind of like space out for a second and then you realize you're a couple more minutes down the road? I mean, obviously you're driving, you're paying attention, but also it's like, how did I get here? I don't remember passing the post office. I always pass on the way home. That's your subconscious mind taking over. How we get up in the morning, the pattern of how we brush our teeth, if you take medication, when you take a shower, that rhythm, those are habits. They are things you've done day after day after day so often that now your body and your brain could run on autopilot to make those things happen. So when we talk about habits, we're actually talking about patterns, we're talking about choices, and we're talking about rhythms.
Yeah, that's good. And then I heard it just recently, like, honestly, your habits are who you are.
Yeah.
Like at the most basic level, it's simply who you are. It's simply what you do. It's who you are. And so again, if you don't like who you are, then we got to tweak and make some changes.
Yeah.
So one of our favorite books is called Atomic Habits by James Clear. Great book if you're looking
this book
for some encouragement on that. So it's an awesome book. And one of the stories from that book that I really, really loved was about this British cycling team in I want to say like the late 2010s into maybe 2015, something like that. I'm going to mess up the details. But basically the story goes like this. They were not a good bicycling team. They were not winning any championships. They were never coming in first. They weren't coming in third. They weren't.
Did you say is the British team?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The British cycling team. They weren't winners. They get a new coach. The new coach says, hey, guys, we're going to become winners. We're going to look at everything that we do, and we're going to try to find ways to tweak our habits, basically who we are. We're just going to tweak them a little bit to become a little bit better. And he talks about this concept of just trying to be 1% better. And for most people, 1% is like, oh, who cares? Like,
yeah, does not feel significant enough to put any effort towards.
I lose 1% of weight. Like you're going to look exactly the same. You're going to feel the exact, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that was his idea. Let's do 1% increments on everything across the whole board in every arena. And as we do, we're going to become exponentially better because a whole bunch of those piled up compound and become something great. So one of the most powerful stories from this is they started to look at the dust around the bicycles. And they realized, okay, dust slows things down. And
like in the gears.
Yeah, in the gears. If we can keep dust out of our bikes, we might be 1% faster. So they had black vans at the time. And they decided to replace the vans with all white. Okay, so everything on the inside was crystal clear and white. They wanted to make the inside of the van kind of like a medical room, if you will. And so they made the inside white, and they started paying a lot of attention to how clean the bikes were, especially during, before and after races and then during storage. And just even that little fine detail allowed them to become like that much faster. And the glory story of this is that around this time frame, they're getting better year after year. They're starting to win. They're, first place in this, first place in that. Now the Olympics come to town to London. And that year that the Olympics came to town to London, they win the gold as the British team winning the gold for their home country. It's beautiful, but because they focused on the tiny, tiny little habits to become an overall better team.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us discount the importance of spending 1% a day or a season. I mean, if you tried to increase your productivity 1% a week, you would be so much more productive when at the end of 3 months. But when you think about how do I get from here to there, it's like, oh my gosh, this is going to require so much of me. And the reality is, the beautiful thing about habits is when we pay attention to them and when we adopt them and when we release the ones that we shouldn't have, then what we're doing is we're actually growing into the kind of person that we want to be. I like to tell people all the time that the reality is if you could do the thing, like if you were doing the thing that you want to do, you would be that kind of a person, right? And so a lot of us, we think, well, I want this big goal, but our life doesn't match up with the kind of life that produces that type of end result. And the key is learning to make your life line up with the kind of life that produces that end result. That's the key. And that's where habits come into play.
Yeah.
So James Clear likes to say it in this book, Atomic Habits. I love this quote. He says, we do not rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our systems. And what are our systems? It's our habits. So the daily things that you're doing, the weekly things that you're doing, they are making a difference in your future.
Yeah. Gosh, that is so powerful. So with your current habits, there's another one that says habits eat goals for breakfast. I love that concept because, goals are good. And let's be very clear. We're huge believers in vision and like, where are you going? What are you wanting to do? Huge believers in that because that's going to pull you forward. But if that's your goal with nothing else, it's not going to get there. So then you start to put in those little habits to take you there. That's where the real power is. So the question is, who are you becoming?
I love that question.
It's Rachel's favorite
question. It's my
question.
signature question.
Why is that your favorite question?
I love this question because I started asking myself this 5 years ago. And what I loved about it, and I used to have another podcast called The Art of Being You with Rachel Wortman. And we literally bring this question up on that podcast every 6 months, like clockwork. Because when you ask yourself, who am I becoming? This is what you're doing. You're evaluating your habits and the trajectory of your life. And when you stop to ask, you can make changes. You can actually decide, do I like the direction that I'm going? Do I like the trajectory of my life in this season? And if you don't, you can actually do something about it with time to spare until, instead of just ending up in the destination and going, how did I get here? I don't even recognize myself anymore. Well, there was a series of choices and habits that you developed and other habits that you let go of that ended you where you are.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so good. Gosh, I love it. So who are you becoming? And the best news, if you don't like it, change it. Piece of cake. It's
your
so
life.
easy.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, change it. And there is real power in unlocking your thinking, and just by asking that question. One of my coaches, his name is Lee Brower, he says that the human mind cannot leave a question alone. So he's always posing questions.
Say that again.
The human mind cannot leave a question alone. So if you pose a question, your brain subconsciously is going to chew on it without you realizing it. It's just going to get to work, thinking about this question, because the human mind likes these closed loop kind of things. And you pose a question, it's an open loop, and your human mind is going to want to try to close it. So who are you becoming? Ask the question, and then take the time to think about it, because when you take the time to think about it, you can begin to get serious about, all right, who do I really want to become? How can I get there? You start chewing on those obstacles of becoming who you really want to be. And one of my favorite exercises is it's from Strategic Coach, and it's called the Strategy Circle. Basically, you list out what's the goal, ultimate goal. And then on the left side of the page, you list out all the obstacles preventing you from getting to your goal. Then on the right side of the page, you list out creative ways to overcome those obstacles. And they don't even have to be creative. They're just practical ways to overcome those obstacles. And then at the bottom of it, you just list out, okay, key takeaways, top 3 takeaways, what's it going to be? It's a simple exercise, but it's a thinking exercise that really, if you take the time to do it, you can take massive ground in your movement forward with whatever you're trying to do. Because I think you'll be surprised. A lot of the subconscious obstacles, a lot of the real obstacles that you feel, there's ways around it if you'll just take a minute to think about it and to consider and to pray and to ask God, like, all right, this is a problem. What are we going to do about it? And you'd be surprised at what you come up with, what the Lord puts in your heart. I was just writing this morning that the Bible says in Proverbs 25 that the Lord keeps things hidden from us, okay? He loves to keep these secrets, these treasures hidden from us. But it is the glory of kings, is what it says, to seek those out. And those who thoroughly seek those things out, they unlock that treasure. And that's like the Lord loves to glorify us as we do this kind of hide and seek game with him. So the Lord has things for you to find. And when you take the time to look at those obstacles, to thoroughly search those out, the Lord loves to give you the answers and loves to give you creative ways and to drop things in your spirit of how to do it a little bit differently.
Yeah. So let's talk about it on a very, very practical level, because sometimes we can think, okay, I need better habits, but what are the habits that you need? So let's say that you have a financial goal that you want to pursue, and you want to take your family on a vacation, or you want to have 3 months of emergency money in a savings account, or you want to buy your first investment and you want the seed money for that. Whatever the goal might be, what's a habit of somebody who does good finances? Think about it. So, if I'm saying to you, if you're saying to me, man, I want help, like I want to have a better savings account, I would say, well, talk to me about the habits of your spending. When you go to shop, do you shop at a place where you constantly are buying stuff you don't need, like Target, right? We don't want to hear that, but we're like I stopped going to Target specifically because I knew I would buy at least 3 to 5 extra things I didn't even know I wanted before I got there. It's like that joke, Target will tell you what you need when you get there. And I didn't want that. I wanted to have a clear spending goal. I had a clear spending goal, and I realized that I was unable to have self-control in that environment. So I started shopping at Walmart. And if you're like me, you want to be out of Walmart as fast as you get into it. But that habit changed my spending habits, because now I didn't go to Target. I literally went to Target yesterday. My kids needed some new clothes, and I can't even believe how much money I spent. And they were on the clothes, and clothes are expensive, and we have a lot of kids. But I was kind of laughing to myself because I was thinking, I'm so glad I broke this pattern in my life of always doing my grocery shopping at Target, because of how much less I've bought over the last year since I stopped doing that. So what's the financial habits that you need to build in? Think about it like this. If you go out to eat, is everybody getting a drink? Well, that can be $10 at least, right? And so if you have a spending goal, change the habit to where you're saying, instead of being the kind of person who always does this, now we're trying to be the person who does this. We could talk about it with health goals, drinking more water, eating more fruits and vegetables, eating more protein, that kind of stuff. Build those in as habits. On a spiritual level, when you wake up in the morning, what's the first thing that you do? I have a real bad habit of scrolling social media when I wake up. And you know what? I was thinking about this a couple weeks ago, and I thought I want to read the Bible first thing in the morning, almost as like an interruption to my habit, because I'm going to read the Bible throughout the day. I'm going to think about it. I'm going to sit on it. And first thing in the morning, I don't have the brain capacity to like receive from the Lord. But I decided I realized, I'll spend like 20 minutes in the morning scrolling social media when I really just need 3 minutes to wake up and then get going with my day. So I'm wasting time in my morning by opening Facebook when I'm reading stuff I don't even care about. Sorry if I do follow you on Facebook. I do care about you, but I don't always care about what's on Facebook, but I'll just do it because it's been my habit. So the interruption has been letting go of that habit and replacing it with opening up YouVersion on my phone. And I'll read like 2 or 3 scriptures. And wouldn't you know, I'm ready to get out of bed because it's a little bit harder to read, 8 scrolls of scriptures first thing in the morning. So I think it's so important for you to evaluate your habits. So let's talk about 5 practical things you can do to build better habits, to build a better life. You guys ready for this?
Love it.
All right. So number 1 is going to be evaluate your habits. I just said this. Think about what they actually are. So I would encourage you, if you really want to get clear about being a higher performing person, a more productive person, increasing an area of your life, make a chart in your journal and literally list out a couple of categories: spiritual life, emotional health, family, your personal life, like, your vision for who you want to be, your finances. List out the various categories that matter to you, and then just make a little note of at least 3 of the habits that you currently have in those arenas. So that's step 1, evaluate your habits. Step number 2, looking at it and deciding what needs to be added here. Like, is there anything that I'm missing? This would go back to what I shared with you before. I'm missing habits that create a more disciplined approach for me in certain areas of my life. So what am I going to do? I'm going to decide if I want to actually build them in, right?
Yeah.
So what needs to be added? Third question is going to be what needs to be taken away? My habit. Now, nobody would say, oh, my habit every day is scrolling social media. But we do it. And so what are we looking for? We're calling habits patterns. We're looking for the patterns of the things we do every day, whether or not we think it's a good idea. It's a habit. So that's my habit. And I want to let go of that. I'm going to let that go. So that's step number 3. So 1, evaluate your habits. Number 2, what needs to be added. Number 3, what needs to be removed. And then we've got 2 more. Number 4, what are you actually going to commit to? What of those changes are you actually going to commit to? If nobody has asked you this lately, let me be the person to just poke my finger a little bit in you and really challenge you to think about this. What is going to be required for you to make the changes that you want to make? You are going to have to do some things differently. And it begins with making the commitment to change that. So you have to decide, am I committed to actually changing these things? And then the last question you want to ask yourself is why is this important? Why is this important? And really what that's doing is it's causing you to come back to the vision for your life. It's causing you to come back to evaluating why do these things matter to you? Because when you get the why, you can actually begin to have the strength and the stamina to make it happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's so good. And then as you're starting to look at those things, hopefully you have a little list of things that you're shooting for. If you don't have a list, if you're unable to come up with those, look, who do you want to become? What do they do? Just do what they do.
To get started, yeah.
Yeah, to get started. You'll be there. But scientists say 30 days to create a habit. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what they say. So, let's start small. And I think it's important also to even start smaller than that. If you're trying to drink a bottle of water every day, just shoot for today and then shoot for a couple days. And wow, okay, I did half the week. Oh, I wonder if I can do a whole week. Push yourself for the whole week. Push yourself for a couple weeks. But making it attainable, like breaking it down into small pieces. And you'll find that there's this momentum that kind of kicks over. Like at first, maybe you're not fully committed to whatever the habit is. But then as you do it a little bit consistently and you get some confidence that you are able to do the thing that you're hoping to do, something begins to switch in your mind. And instead of like, oh, I hope to be this, I hope to be a generous giver when the Lord puts it on my heart, or all the time when instead of I hope to, as you get those little victories, you soon become, your brain switches over and becomes committed to this concept. I am this.
Yeah.
And when you get a hold of that commitment and you become that, you take ownership of who you are, man, you get this like great wave of momentum behind you to allow you to really change what your life is. And then that becomes a genuine habit, which is simply who you are. And now you're going in a different place. Your little car is taking you to a different place. So 30, 60, 90 days. And if you can do something for 90 days, you're a different person. Like it's completely different.
If you can do something for 90 days, you will be like, you will know whether or not you want to do that for your life, you know? And I think that's part of the challenge is we think we want to be something, but we have not thought about what it takes to become that. And that's what today is really all about, really thinking about what it takes to become who you want to be so that you can actually do it, because you can. You actually can become the person that's in your mind. It might take some hard work, but it's absolutely doable. So today is all about habits. Today we're talking about building a better life so that you can building better habits, so that you can build a better life. And that's kind of what we want to wrap up with, and I want to end and challenge you with. The better habits that you build are going to result in a better life. So start doing it now.